The Korathi ambassador's gills fluttered with amusement as she projected humanity's biological profile across the council chamber. These creatures evolved from trees, Thessera announced, her webbed fingers dancing through holographic data. They possess vestigial lungs designed for thin atmospheric breathing. Their muscle density is insufficient for deep water navigation. Their bodies lack pressure compensation membranes. She turned her iridescent eyes toward the human delegation, and the contempt in her voice sliced through the recycled air of galactic Station Meridian. To grant Earth access to the Abyssal Territories will be granting them access to their own graves. Commander Elena Vasquez remained perfectly still in her chair. 19 years serving the United Earth Maritime Forces had taught her patience. It had also taught her that the most dangerous predators were often the ones who appeared calm before striking. Ambassador Thessera, Elena spoke, her voice carrying the practiced steadiness of someone who had commanded vessels through Category 9 storms. With respect, you're operating on outdated assumptions. Laughter rippled to the Korathi section of the council, a bubbling, wet sound that echoed off crystalline walls. 3 other aquatic species joined them. The eel-like Vendrith, the crustacean Calyrex, and the translucent deepkin whose bodies pulsed with bioluminescence. Outdated, Thessara's secondary eyelids flickered with disbelief. Human, we have studied your species for 40 cycles. You drown in depths we consider shallow. Your recreational swimming barely qualifies as surface displacement. The Abyssal Territories contain pressures that would crush your fragile skeletal structure into organic paste. Elena felt Lieutenant Marcus' chin shift beside her. The younger officer's jaw tightened, his scarred hands, remnants of a decompression accident 3 years prior, clenching beneath the table. Permission to respond, Commander? Marcus whispered. Hold! Elena murmured back. The Korathi ambassador continued her presentation, displaying footage of human swimmers struggling in controlled aquatic environments. Each clip had been carefully selected to emphasize weakness, panic thrashing, oxygen deprivation, failed pressure tests. The Abyssal Territories contain resources critical to galactic stability, Thessera declared. Hydrovium deposits, quantum-stable minerals, living technology that requires careful extraction. We cannot risk these assets on a species that treats water as an obstacle rather than a home. Representative Yorn of the Calyrex clicked his mandibles in agreement. The motion stands. Humanity is biologically unsuited for deep water operations. Their request for territorial rights is denied. Elena rose slowly. The movement drew every eye in the chamber. Motion to present counter-evidence, she said. Thessara's gills flared. What counter-evidence could possibly? 3 weeks ago, Elena interrupted, a Korathi research vessel experienced catastrophic pressure seal failure in the Merthas Trench. Depth, 14,000 meters. Crew complement, 47. Your own rescue teams declare recovery impossible. Silence crystallized across the chamber. The Korathi delegation exchanged uneasy glances. How do you know about that incident? Thessera demanded. That information was classified. Elena reached into her uniform jacket and produced a small holographic projector. She placed it on the diplomatic table with deliberate precision. Because we were there. The projection activated, flooding the chamber with footage that made Thessara's secondary heart stutter. Humans, swimming, at 14,000 meters, not struggling, not dying, moving through crushing darkness with the fluid grace of creatures born to the deep. Their modified dive suits gleamed like second skin, and their movements synchronized with predatory efficiency as they extracted Korathi survivors from twisted wreckage. 44 crew members recovered alive. Elena continued. Your people, Ambassador, saved by the species you claim cannot survive your waters. The footage showed a human diver, face visible through a reinforced faceplate, cradling an unconscious Korathi child against his chest. Marcus Chun, the same man now sitting beside Elena with scars earned from pushing the limits of what humanity could endure. Thessara's voice emerged as a whisper. This is impossible. Elena leaned forward, and for the first time, she allowed a smile to cross her features. Sharp, knowing, and absolutely unafraid. Ambassador, you've spent 40 cycles studying what humans were. Perhaps it's time you learned what we become. She tapped the projector, and new coordinates blazed across the chamber display. The Abyssal Territories. 23 human deep-water installations, operational for the past 18 months. Built, staffed, and maintained without your permission or knowledge. The council erupted into chaos, but Elena's eyes never left Asara's horrified face. "You thought we couldn't swim," Elena said quietly. "You were wrong." The emergency session convened within the hour. The Asara's personal quarters aboard Galactic Station Meridian were designed for aquatic comfort. Pressure-regulated chambers filled with saline solution that mimicked her homeworld's deepest trenches. Now, those familiar waters felt suffocating as she reviewed the human footage for the 47th time. "Enhance Sector 7, she commanded. The holographic display zoomed toward a human diver navigating wreckage that should have crushed him instantly. His movements displayed no hesitation, no fear. His suit appeared impossibly thin for the depths recorded, barely thicker than ceremonial Korathi skinwear. Ambassador, her aide, a young male named Veth, emerged from the connecting pool. "The council demands your analysis. They want to know how this happened." "I want to know that myself," Desera replied, her voice carrying an edge that made Veth's gills flatten defensively. She studied the diver's face through his faceplate. "Lieutenant Marcus Chun, according to the human delegation's manifest. Scarred tissue marked his jaw and neck, damage consistent with rapid pressure change. The humans called it the bends, a weakness that should have killed him. Yet there he was, cradling a Korathi child at depths that veteran vendors struggled to reach. There's something wrong with their biology," Desera murmured. "Something they've changed." 3 levels below the council chambers, Commander Elena Vasquez stood before a reinforced viewport overlooking the station's hydroponic gardens. The sprawling greenery represented 12 species' attempts to recreate their homeworlds in miniature. Earth's section was modest, a small grove of bamboo and ferns that required constant atmospheric adjustment. Marcus approached, his footsteps deliberate against the metallic flooring. "The Calorex are mobilizing scout vessels toward our installations," he reported. "Long-range sensors detected deployment 40 minutes ago." Elena didn't turn from the viewport. Expected. How long until they reached the nearest site? 18 hours. Maybe less if they push their engines. "Good." Marcus paused. "Good, Commander? They need to see it with their own eyes." Elena finally faced him, and something ancient moved behind her steady gaze. "Reports and footage won't convince them. They need to watch us work. Watch us thrive." Marcus understood. He had been there for the early trials, the failures that had cost humanity 17 research teams before they cracked the adaptation protocols. His scars weren't accidents. They were lessons written in flesh. "The Council will demand explanations," he said. "They'll want to know how we survived conditions that should have killed us." Let them wonder. Elena moved toward the corridor leading to the diplomatic wing. Mystery breeds caution. Caution buys time. And when they stop being cautious, Elena's expression shifted, a flicker of something fierce and unyielding. "Then they'll learn that humanity doesn't just adapt to pressure, Lieutenant. We were forged by it." Desera found a human commander, waiting outside the council antechamber. The Korathi ambassador had prepared arguments, accusations, demands for transparency. She had rehearsed diplomatic threats and calculated the political leverage necessary to force human compliance. But when Elena Vasquez met her eyes, all those preparations dissolved like salt in deep currents. "You have questions," Elena said simply. "I have many." Desara's secondary hearts pounded against her thoracic plates. "Your species has been cataloged for 40 cycles. Biological limitations documented. Psychological profiles established. Nothing in our records suggests capability for... Your records are incomplete. Then complete them." Desera stepped closer, close enough to smell the strange iron salt scent that clung to human skin. "Explain how your people survived depths that would rupture unaugmented tissue. Explain those installations you've hidden from galactic surveillance." Elena considered the question. When she spoke, her voice carried the weight of buried history. 70 years ago, Earth's rising oceans consumed 40% of our habitable landmass. Billions faced displacement, extinction. She paused, allowing the words to settle. We had two choices, Ambassador. Die on the surface or learn to live beneath. Thessara's gills trembled. You modified yourselves? We became what survival required. Elena's smile held no warmth. Only the hard-earned pride of a species that had stared into annihilation and refused to blink. Your ancestors evolved over millions of years to rule the deep. Ours gave us 70 years and told us to figure it out. She turned toward the council chamber doors. We figured it out. The door slid open, revealing the gathered representatives of a dozen aquatic civilizations, all watching humanity with new eyes. Eyes that, for the first time, contained something other than contempt. Fear. The Calorec scout vessel Chitinous Fury descended through darkness that swallowed starlight. Commander Vrex had navigated the Abyssal Territories for 30 cycles. He knew these depths intimately. The crushing pressure, the absolute cold, the predatory creatures that hunted by vibration alone. This was his domain. His birthright as a crustacean species evolved for the void between surface and seafloor. Yet nothing had prepared him for what his sensors detected at 16,000 meters. Impossible! His navigation officer clicked. Commander, I'm reading thermal signatures, structural masses, life signs. Vrex's compound eyes processed the data scrolling across his command sphere. The signatures matched nothing in Calorec's databases. Too warm for natural formations, too organized for geological activity. Bring us closer, he ordered. The Chitinous Fury angled downward, its pressure-hardened hull groaning against forces that would flatten lesser vessels. External floods activated, piercing the perpetual midnight with harsh illumination. Vrex's mandibles froze mid-click. A city stared back at him. Not a research station. Not a temporary installation. A city sprawling across the trench floor like something that had always belonged there. Domed habitats connected by pressurized corridors. Mining operations extracting hydrovium from volcanic vents. Agricultural spheres where bioluminescent gardens pulsed with cultivated life. And everywhere, humans moved with the fluid confidence of creatures born to the abyss. Open communications, Vrex managed. Priority channel to Galactic Station Meridian. Ambassador Thessara received a transmission in the Council's secure chamber. She watched through Commander Vrex's external feeds as a human figure detached from the nearest habitat and swam toward the Calorec's vessel. No vehicle, no submersible. Just a single diver cutting through crushing pressure with movements that defied biological possibility. The human, female young, with close-cropped dark hair visible through her faceplate, stopped meters from Vrex's observation port. She pressed something against the hull. Audio crackled through the chamber speakers. Welcome to Mariana Station. The woman's voice carried strange harmonics, as though her vocal cords had been restructured for underwater transmission. I'm Director Yuki Tanaka. Commander Vasquez mentioned you might visit. Thessara's gills fluttered. She knew. She planned this. On the feed, Director Tanaka gestured toward the sprawling installation behind her. Would you like a tour? We've been hoping to establish formal contact with the Calorecs. Your deep mining expertise could complement our extraction protocols. Commander Vrex's response came through fragmented and disbelieving. How? How are you surviving? Your suits appear insufficient for these pressures. Your movement suggests natural adaptation, not mechanical augmentation. Tanaka's smile was visible even through the distortion of her faceplate. Because it's not entirely mechanical, Commander. She raised one hand, fingers spread. In the harsh floodlighting, Vrex could see translucent membranes stretching between each digit. Tissue that hadn't existed in human biology 70 years ago. We call it the Abyssal Protocol, Tanaka continued. Genetic restructuring, pressure-resistant bone density, enhanced oxygen extraction from water-based environments. It took 3 decades of perfect. She tilted her head, and for a moment, something flickered in her eyes. Something that reminded Thessara of the predatory fish that hunted her own people in ancestral waters. Humanity doesn't conquer environments. Commander, we become part of them. Elena Vasquez watched the feed from across the council chamber. The fear she had seen in alien eyes earlier had transformed into something more complex. The Vendrith representative coiled tighter around his observation perch. The Deepkin's bioluminescence flickered erratically. Even Tessara's confident posture had collapsed into something resembling uncertainty. Good. Commander? Marcus appeared at her shoulder, voice low. We're receiving reports from the other installations. Korathi vessels approaching Site 7. Vendor scouts detected near the Challenger Deep Array. Expected responses. Elena kept her attention fixed on Director Tanaka's tour, watching humanity's ambassador guide an increasingly unsettled Caloret's commander through pressurized corridors where children played and families lived. They need to confirm the threat is real. And when they confirm it, Elena turned to face her lieutenant fully. Marcus had been present for the first successful adaptation trials, had volunteered his own body when the protocols required human testing. His scars represented more than survival. They represented evolution. When they confirm it, Elena said quietly, they'll realize that the Abyssal Territories aren't contested anymore. They haven't been for 18 months. She looked back at the council, at the gathered representatives of species that had dismissed humanity as surface-dwelling primitives. The deep belongs to us now. The only question remaining is whether they accept that peacefully. Marcus followed her gaze. And if they don't, Elena's expression hardened into something ancient, something forged in drowned cities and desperate adaptation. Then they'll learn we can do more than swim, Lieutenant. Her hand rested on the ceremonial blade at her hip. We can hunt. The Allied fleet assembled above the Mariana Trench within 6 hours. Thessera stood aboard the Korathi command vessel Eternal Current, watching tactical displays populate with vessel signatures. 47 warships from 4 aquatic civilizations, the largest combined force deployed since the Vendrith expansion wars. Ambassador, Admiral Kessita's voice rumbled through the command sphere. All vessels report combat readiness. Weapons charged. Descent coordinates locked. Thessara's gills fluttered with unease. When she had advocated for this response, it had seemed logical. Humanity had violated galactic territory without authorization. They had hidden military installations in sovereign waters. They had genetically modified their species without council approval. Yet something in Elena Vasquez's calm certainty haunted her. We can hunt. Ambassador? Kesset pressed. Your authorization is required to proceed. Thessera stared at the trench below, that impossible darkness where humanity had learned to thrive. Proceed with... Every tactical display erupted simultaneously. New signatures. Hundreds of them, rising from depths that exceeded the fleet's operational limits. Contact! The sensor officer's voice cracked. Massive thermal bloom at 22,000 meters. 25,000. 30,000. Kessita's tentacles writhed. Nothing survives at 30,000 meters. That's below the Korathi absolute threshold. Confirmed contact. The officer continued, trembling. Vessels ascending. Configuration unknown. Speed exceeding standard propulsion limits. Thessera watched the signatures climb through crushing darkness, climbing toward the Allied fleet with predatory intent. How many? She whispered. The sensor officer turned, and genuine terror filled his bioluminescent eyes. 312 vessels, Ambassador. All human. Elena Vasquez observed the unfolding scenario from Mariana Station's command center. Director Tanaka stood beside her, monitoring fleet communications that the Korathi believed were encrypted. They weren't. Human intelligence had cracked aquatic cipher systems within the first year of their deep-water operations. The Allied fleet is holding position, Tanaka reported. They're frightened. They should be. Elena watched her own vessels rise like leviathans from forgotten depths. Patch me through to Ambassador Thessera. Priority diplomatic channel. The connection established within seconds. Ambassador. Elena's voice carried through the Korathi command sphere, calm and absolute. You've gathered quite an impressive fleet. Unfortunately, you've gathered it above water we've claimed for 18 months. Thessara's response came strained. You cannot claim the Abyssal Territories. Galactic law. Galactic law assumes territorial claims require council approval. Elena leaned forward, her reflection ghosting across tactical displays. It also assumes that claiming territory requires the capability to defend it. Look at your sensors, Ambassador. Look carefully. The human fleet had stopped ascending. 300 vessels now surrounded the Allied formation, above, below, and from every lateral approach. Smaller signatures detached from the larger ships. Divers, thousands of them, armed figures moving through open water with the coordinated precision of apex predators. 30,000 meters, Elena continued softly. That's where humanity learned to live when the surface rejected us. That's where we built our first true cities, not colonies, Ambassador. Civilizations. While your species debated whether we could swim, we were already mapping territories you cannot reach. Thessara's secondary hearts hammered against her chest. This is an act of war. No. Elena's voice sharpened. War implies two sides capable of fighting. What you're witnessing is a demonstration. The human fleet held position, utterly still, utterly silent, waiting. 70 years ago, rising oceans drowned our world. Billions died. We had every reason to surrender, to accept extinction gracefully. Elena paused, letting the word settle. Instead, we rebuilt ourselves. Not just our technology. Our bodies. Our very genetic identity. We became creatures the universe had never seen. She smiled, the same sharp, knowing expression that had unsettled Thessara from their first encounter. You thought we couldn't swim. But Ambassador, humanity has never been about what we can't do. We're defined by what we refuse to accept. The tactical displays flickered. Human vessels began descending, slowly, deliberately, returning to the depths they had claimed as home. The Abyssal Territories belong to Earth now, Elena finished. That's not a negotiation. It's a reality you'll need to accommodate. The council reconvened 3 days later. Thessara stood before the assembled representatives. Exhaustion etched across her features. The Allied fleet had withdrawn, without firing a single weapon. There had been no battle, no victory to claim. Only the crushing recognition of fundamental miscalculation. Humanity has proposed joint development agreements, she announced. Shared access to hydrovium deposits, collaborative research initiatives, cultural exchange programs. She paused, studying the faces around her, faces that had once regarded humans with contempt. They're offering partnership, not conquest. Admiral Keseth clicked his mandibles skeptically. And if we refuse? Thessara remembered Elena Vasquez's final transmission. The human commander hadn't threatened. She hadn't needed to. They'll continue without us. Build deeper. Adapt further. Become something we cannot comprehend. She turned toward the viewport, where distant Earth rotated against infinite stars. The question isn't whether we accept their offer, Admiral. It's whether we can afford not to. Somewhere in the darkness below, humanity waited, patient, adaptive, eternal, learning, as they always had, to thrive where others believed survival impossible.